Corruption adversely affects each and every sector
any
of the
sort of
country.
ideology. Just is a great location for Nepal to explore its potential.
Namaste and welcome to Nepal's Top 7 Debaters produced by Leadership Academy.
This is the semi-final round in the category 4 of grade 10, 11 and 12 English language. And the topic for today's competition is traditional technology should be mandatory for construction in Nepal.
Let me now introduce our panel of judges for today's semi-final round. Our first judge is Dr. Lisa STEAD. She is a program manager at Habitat for Humanity, Great Britain.
Our second judge is Mr. ARUNA. He is the country representative of Habitat for Humanity, Nepal. We will now begin with the debate.
We, Nepal and Nepalese, are very rich in our culture and traditions. We have numerous cultures and traditions which we use for our daily survival in our daily life. From clothing to the construction materials of great buildings, we were self-sustained, and our traditions truly help us to make us self-sustained. We can look at the examples of some great monuments built long time ago when no modern technologies were even discovered, like the Basantapur temples or the traditional houses of anywhere you go in the villages. We see a uniqueness and a beauty in uniqueness in our countries. So, because we are self-sustained and our traditions helps us to make self-sustained in every way, in the chapter topic for clothing, we have Gunyo Cholo and Daura Surwal, which is which is also our national dress and is our tradition. But this tradition, and along with other traditions, has been decreasing because of so-called modernization. But what we fail to realize is that if we do not make these traditional technologies mandatory in our country, then we will lose our identity, because it is the culture and tradition that is the true identity of Nepal. And we Nepalese are preserving our identity in every small way we can. For example, for the flower pots, we are still using the mud flower pots instead of the ceramic ones, because that is our tradition and it defines who we are. And moving on, the traditional technologies which helps us in construction are produced locally. Many of them are produced locally, and due to the modernization and advancement in technological aspect, such small-scale industries have not been getting proper market, and as a result, they have been collapsing. And this results in the loss in economy in huge amounts. And since it is not very favorable in Nepal to make big multinational companies because of the economic factor, and also of because of the sponsoring factors and the political instability, I strongly believe that the traditional technologies should be mandatory in the construction of Nepal. Thank you.
As of Population Monograph 2003, published by CBS, 2.89% of the total economically active population of our country, they are indulged in professions directly related to construction. Now, these 450,000 people in our country, for the record, do not follow or do not use traditional technology. They are skilled and they have the knowledge about modern technology. So, now if we decide to bring up a policy to make traditional technologies mandatory for each and every construction in our nation, what we basically do is put those 450,000 jobs at stake, and those 450,000 more people are going to be unemployed because of this policy of making traditional technologies mandatory. Now, in our nation, the employment state is already so vulnerable and so poor, and the last thing we would do is put another 450,000 jobs at stake. Let's move on to another point, the time consumption of traditional technologies. Now, as modern technologies are being developed, the ease and the speed of work is also increasing. Now, if we go back to traditional technology, what we do is we slow down the rate of development in our country, so these constructions take a longer span of time. So when these constructions take longer span of time, the development in the overall nation is hindered, and it is not the thing we want today. What we want today, being a developing nation in South Asia, is fast and very immediate developments and immediate construction. Another matter that I would like to point out is the ease of doing tasks. When we use modern technology, what we do is make our tasks, the construction tasks, very easy. And if we go and use traditional technologies, it will become slower and more difficult. For example, if we compare a dozen of people with shovels in their hand to a bulldozer, the obvious answer would be bulldozer, because bulldozers are very efficient and they're very quick, as well as it does not require a lot of effort. Now, many people may argue this is not environment friendly because bulldozers consume fuel, but I would like to disagree with that point, because each and every vehicle in the nation also consumes fuel, and this amount of fuel which is consumed by these machineries in construction does not make a huge difference. Moreover, in our nation, the cost has also to be kept in mind when we go towards constructional activities. Now, people argue that construction with modern technologies are expensive, but rather, when we use traditional technologies, a lot of human resources and a lot of time is consumed, which increases the cost of construction. While when we use modern technology, the cost of construction is really, really low, as very low amount of time is taken by it. So at the end, I would like to argue that traditional technologies should not be mandatory for construction in our nation. Thank you.
Technology means the application of scientific knowledge to practical uses. And when we combine this word technology with traditional, it itself explains that traditional technology is scientific, practical, and efficient. Technology should be such that it is socially appropriate and environmentally sustainable. Traditional technology can help solve 4 major problems of our country, that are poverty, starvation, unemployment, and urban migration. The traditional technology can also help the low-income communities do better and have a better quality life by using resources and skills that are available at hand. According to the Handicraft Association of Nepal, the handicraft has a wide industry, and it supports alone, the handicraft alone supports 3 lakh people. The handicrafts are also very much ideal for exporting because they are low in volume and high in value, resulting in large shipments to over 62 countries worldwide. According to the Export Council of Nepal, the carpets alone form the largest exported items in Nepal, earning $135 million for the country every year. Now that's a handsome lot when we are talking of a nation like ours. Also, the handicraft industries, they employ a number of women, which helps in women empowerment. These handicraft industries have also made an identity for the Nepalese abroad. The traditional technology makes use of the resources which are available in our own homeland. For example, the usage of bajra instead of limestone. As bajra is readily available, it is affordable by all, and above all, it is much stronger than limestone is. Now, according to Kathmandu Post in 2006 in Dhading, there was a devastating flood that threatened the lives of 50,000 villagers. But all that was relieved when the villagers found out that the traditional technology of ghata could be transformed into a small business, which is still helping them out. Now, according to the Indian ideological leader Mahatma Gandhi, he advocated for technology that was small, local, and predominantly village-based, so as to make the villages of India self-reliant. Also, he disagreed with the technology that benefited only a minority at the cost of majority, or the technology which replaced the minority just in order to increase the profit by a few numbers. As also very truly said by Dr. Ernst Frederick, small is beautiful. I would like to conclude by saying that I would rather like to call traditional technology as the appropriate technology for our nation, which is very much required and mandatory. Thank you.
Traditional technologies, they have many advantages. That point I will concur. But the thing we need to realize here is the disadvantages of traditional technologies. We need to realize that the disadvantages of using traditional technologies far outweighs the small advantages that they have. Let me begin with the idea of construction. Why do we construct things? We construct things so that they last and provide a certain objective to us, provides homes or temples or something like that. And our objective while constructing them is to make sure that they last, that they are durable and that they are strong. So now let me compare the two technologies. Construction by two technologies. First of all, old technologies, and second, we have modern new technologies. First of all, before I go there, let me define technology. Technology, people have assumed, only means tools and machineries. That is not the case. Technology also means the techniques used in construction. It also means the construction materials used. So let me talk about my durability and strength point. You see, I have two bridges. One is made out of concrete, and the other one is made out of bamboo. Which one do you think will last longer? Of course, the concrete one, right? It will be more strong, it will be more durable. When we use traditional technology, we run a risk of being not enough durable, of the construction not being enough durable, and the construction not being strong enough. I'd like to go to another point that my friend has also talked about time, money, and manpower. You see, traditional technologies have huge advantages in time, money, and manpower compared to modern technology. So I have given you 5 points about strength, technology, money, time, and manpower. All 5 of these points are quintessential in today's construction works. Now, let me go to some of the points that my opponents have claimed. First of all, my opponents have claimed that traditional technologies makes Nepal more sustainable. Right. I'd like to question that point because currently, according to the World Bank, Nepal is losing 1.5 rupees a day in trade deficit. That is not sustainable development. Until now, we have been using traditional technologies. We need to go away from that. That data shows that we need to go away from traditional technology and towards modern technology. My opponents also made a point of how handicrafts and carpets are being used, are being exported from Nepal, but I'd like to point out that those are not construction works. Our debate is about construction works in technology used in construction works. Carpets are not exactly construction works. I'd also finally like to point out, what if I'm a businessman and I want to create a skyscraper? I want to make a skyscraper for my business. Will I be able to make that skyscraper using traditional technology? The simple answer is no. So instead of making traditional technology mandatory, and the key word here is mandatory, what we should be doing is we should be letting the construction workers choose the technology which is appropriate for whichever construction work they're doing. If they're making huge skyscrapers, we should let them use modern technology. If they are building things like temples, we should let them use traditional technology. So I'd like to conclude saying that traditional technologies have the advantages. However, the disadvantages that I have talked about of traditional technology being made mandatory far outweighs the advantages. Thank you.
May I request the judges for their comments and the participants to come up on stage?
Quite a diversity of techniques among the 4 of you. I think the first speaker just needs to work on being more fluid with your argument. The second speaker, very good presentation skills. Another good point was that you seemed to believe in what you were saying. The third speaker, I would say you have a very determined presentation skill, but sometimes that can alienate the listener. Whereas the last person that spoke had a very more relaxed presentation skill, which was easier to listen to. I think overall you were covering as a group many of the key issues, but I didn't find one of you with a really coherent argument which followed through all the way through. The last speaker, I liked the way that you gave an example. That's very good, but then you need to back it up with evidence. And I think when you're talking for and against technology, it's very easy to lump all of points into good and bad, you know, whether it's about sort of culture and maybe the poor, or good technology is all about speed and production. And actually there's points that feed into both the arguments. So I think overall as a group you're covering many of the topics, but I'd like to see you just having a clearer argument all the way through when you're talking.
Richard, like you were confident. Topic is more for construction related, but there are a lot of time taken on general technology. So that really took a lot of your time away. So that's something that you have to be very careful, because you're given 3 minutes, so how to really bring all these points together. Right? But that's an area to improve. Ruchit, you are very confident. You are like showing that you are really confident of your statistics, the content, and you presented it in a very cool, relaxed manner, but was forceful. And there were a lot of arguments, and it say when we argue, it's like 1 + 1 = 2, or 5 - 3 = 2. So we need to bring those statistics together and combine that in such a way that we are really proving. It could be done in a very forceful way, very aggressive way, or could be a relaxed way, but still the points, the content speaks for themselves. Tanvi, very confident. You were showing the rest of the audience that you knew what you're talking about. You had a lot of examples, and to quote Mahatma Gandhi was really important, because that's an area that really that a lot of people in the world talk about, and you also have proved how the rural areas have really got improved because of following his philosophy. Really impressive way of presenting, and your body language was so good so that others would really believe in what you're saying. Equally, you did very well. Like very impressive the way you brought out the points, and very argumentative, very logical, and you had a lot of points to speak about. Very well done, and we are looking forward to see more from you all, and to really talk on the topic, and also use more statistics. And of course, there are a lot more research done on this topic, so to see whether you all have really done your homework.
We will now begin with the rebuttal round.
My fellow debaters stated a point that where it stated that making the traditional technologies mandatory increases unemployment. But I would like to argue that how does it improve? And giving the reference of the same example he gave about the bulldozers and the shovel, I would like to say that a bulldozer is operated by just a single person, but a shovels, a lot of them have to do the work that one bulldozer can do. And as a result, more people get employed, and the problem of our country, one of the major problems of our country, poverty, can be dismissed. And the next thing they talk about was about the durability of the constructions. But they say that it will not be as durable and strong as the modern construction. But I would like to argue by putting forth the examples of all those temples and monuments that are still existing in our country, even after hundreds and maybe even some temples about 1,000 decades. What about those? There were no technologies then. So. And another point I would like to put forward is, what if in a case of natural calamity and all those big constructions are destroyed, and they make a more devastating result than the traditional constructions, which are more light and are not so destructive? Thank you.
Proposition first speaker of the debate mentioned about the increasing yield of local level production if we enhance the use of traditional technology in our country. But what I would like to argue is that if we enhance modern technology in place of traditional technology, the local level production can be changed into a much larger level of production and can yield a lot of products from the resources that we have in our nation. The next thing that the proposition second speaker of the debate mentioned was about floods that destroyed, and also it has been mentioned in this round about natural calamities. Now, Nepal is an earthquake-prone nation, and technologies today have succeeded to make technologies which are earthquake resistant, flood resistant, and use of these technologies can reduce the devastations and reduce the destructions that can be resulted due to traditional technologies. Now, the traditional technologies constructions not so strong, and by any sort of natural calamities they can be destructed. So this is why we need to promote modern technologies. Also, it has been mentioned that garments, carpets, and handicrafts are produced in our nation, but I would like to point out that these are not part of construction, but these are a separate field, and this is not what the debate is about. Thank you.
Construction is merely not restricted to the infrastructure area. It is the overall development of a nation. And when a person is talking about the carpets and garments, it is actually giving us the insight of what the nation possesses. For example, a building, a 12-story building for an example, we do not start building from the top. We always look at the base. And for a base, we need to know what our nation has its strengths and weaknesses. And for knowing that, I believe that traditional technology is the best way to know that, because it gives us the insight that what the nation's strengths and weaknesses are. Also, one of my worthy opponents stated that the traditional technology slows down the construction rate, but that is not true, because as I have mentioned earlier, that a multi-story building needs a base, and for base we need traditional technology. We cannot start building from the top. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to begin where I left off in the last round. I talked about how my opponent said that traditional technology makes us self-sustainable, and I gave the example of how Nepal is losing 1.5 billion rupees every day as a trade deficit. I'd also like to point out that Nepal relies heavily on donor nations to keep up its economy. So to say that Nepal is self-sustained just because of traditional technology is not a valid argument, I believe. I'd also like to point out that my opponent gave an example of ghattas, how traditional ghattas have reduced floods. But imagine a scenario in which instead of ghattas, we had huge hydropowers. Not only would they reduce that flood, but what they would also do is they would give us more electricity yield. So we need to look at that as well. If we had hydropower available instead of ghattas, it would be more beneficial to us. So since that is more beneficial, making traditional technology mandatory does not seem like, again, a valid argument. I'd also like to point out how my opponent said that time consumed by traditional technology is nearly equal to that by modern technology just right now. Let me give you an example, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. It took 20 years to build that single pyramid, and it took thousands and thousands of slave labor to build that pyramid. So what that shows here is that it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of manpower to build anything using traditional technologies. I'd also like to finally argue that it is not traditional technologies that are used now, that are made mandatory now, that will build our culture. My first opponent talked about how culturally and traditionally traditional equipments are important, but it is not the traditional equipment that we use now that creates our culture. It is the traditional equipments used in our past that has created our culture. Thank you very much.
While the judges are finalizing the marks, I request the participants to come up on stage.
I agree with the comments. It was not easy for us because you all have done very well. And there was time that we have to really discuss who the first two are, and then the third and the fourth. So accordingly, the best speaker for today's episode is Prasanna Jung Thapa, becomes the first. And second is Tanvi Agrawal. And third is Ruchit Shrestha, and the fourth is Richan Baral. And wish you all the best, and especially for those who have come first and second, that you will move on to the next stage. And of course, you have a great future forward. So it was just neck to neck kind of a competition.
If you are a student studying in between grade 7 and bachelor's level, you can apply for Nepal's Top 7 Young Poets and Nepal's Top 7 Debaters 2014. The application submissions are open now.
We invite you to participate in the alternative education programs run by Leadership Academy. You can call our office at 980-2032-195 or email us at leadershipacademyktm@gmail.com. We will be back next week with another new topic. Till then, have a nice week and namaste.